Okay, there we go. So my name is Tom Brainerd. I'm a product marketing manager at Dell Software. About a little more than 2 years ago, Dell acquired roughly 13 different software companies. A lot of people act surprised sometimes when they come by the Dell booth and realize that Dell has got a very wide portfolio of software and services. So pretty much we can do the entire package of end-to-end solutions. So Dell Software, the company that I used to work for was Quest Software, and a lot of people in the industry have known Quest as a leader in Windows Server migration and management software. So that's where I come from. I've been with Quest/Dell for about 5 years now. And before I get started, I guess I was going to introduce Tony Vaccarelli. He's a pre-sales systems engineer, and if you guys get too technical for me, I am in marketing after all, I may call upon Tony to help. So I also invite you to ask questions during this event. I'd like to make it as interactive as possible, but feel free to interrupt me if I start jabbing on too long. So I usually like to start with defining governance, risk, and compliance. So there's a difference between IT governance, risk, and compliance and just governance, risk, and compliance. GRC can apply to accounting methods, but obviously what we're talking about specifically is trying to govern risk and compliance within the IT space. So this is how Gartner defines it. It's a rather jargony technical definition, but if you think about it, governance is basically about coming up with processes to ensure that things are done a proper way, documented a certain way. Risk is very self-explanatory. Obviously, we want to reduce the risk of a data breach or malicious activity on the network. And then, of course, we have compliance, which just basically means complying with policies and industry regulations. So I'm curious before we move on, how many people here are either IT managers or system administrators? And then how many of you are either focused specifically on, like you're a security officer at a company or you're a compliance officer? Okay, so it looks like maybe 1/20 of you are in security and compliance. Why are we here today? A lot of this stuff is pretty obvious. As technologists, you're probably more interested to know what the solutions are, and as a marketing person, I'd like to get to that point and talk about that. But I do want to give you some background. We're obviously here because every year the amount of data breaches growing it's growing every year. So we have a lot of high-profile stuff going on in the retail space with Home Depot and Target. We've got JP Morgan Chase. AOL, Adobe, Apple, they've all been subject to that. So we're also finding compliance failures out there. That's often a driver for people to have these kinds of IT GRC discussions. Companies are paying penalties and fines. But I think really what's making the C-level most interested is loss of reputation and loss of customers and revenue. It's one thing to pay a big fine. It's another thing to have your brand damaged because customers don't trust that you can protect their information. So I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I think these are pretty telling. I like the middle one there, the green one, the 55%. A lot of this comes from the Verizon data breach investigations report that's annual. It's chock full of lots of information. If you haven't read it, it would be definitely a go-to source. But most of these numbers come from Verizon. But one thing that we have focused on within our Windows management group at Dell is that we are really, in our software unit, we're focused mostly on detection and some prevention. We've got other units within Dell, whether they be SonicWall for firewalls or Case for endpoint protection, that are much more about prevention. But we're big believers in detection primarily. And so what we've also found is most of these attacks are coming from the inside. That shouldn't be a surprise. If you're a retailer, a lot of times what happens is a partner's privileged account gets compromised. Maybe they found it through a phishing attack, or maybe there was some malware loaded. But regardless how you got in externally, eventually most of these threats are happening internally. You know, another thing that I never really realized is that when there's a data breach that happens, I used to think you'd catch it in like 2 or 3 days and you'd shut it down. But a lot of organizations, a Ponymon Institute report showed that it takes on average 205 days for an organization to realize that they've been breached. And I think that's pretty telling that typically with a data breach, people are trying to worm their way in, and they don't necessarily get to like a core Active Directory account on the first attempt, but eventually they find their way in. And once they're in there, they continue to take data and do malicious things with it. And on average, it would take you 205 days to detect that. So we're trying to give you some tools to definitely speed that up. All right, so as the description for this session talked about, we'll talk a little bit about compliance. And what I wanted to focus on, well, let's go through this first. So basically, these are the challenges and pains we find that people have with compliance. A lot of times, it's just a matter of being able to provide sufficient reports to an auditor that shows that you have sufficient control. I'm curious, who here is subject to some kind of industry compliance, whether it be PCI, HIPAA, SOX, FSMA? So, looks like about 2/3 of you. So, security. A lot of organizations don't really have a good process to protect data. They don't really do a good job of protecting their privileged, tracking what their privileged users are doing. And they don't have any alerting. That's a strong suit for us. No visibility. Basically, they don't know who has access to what. They don't know how their point of sale systems are configured. They don't know how their servers are configured. They don't even know when new employees are leaving the organization. So obviously, those employees still perhaps have access back into corporate resources. And then manual processes. Basically, as your organization grows, as the amount of data grows, it's just becoming way too laborious to do all of that manually. So a lot of our technology is meant to automate that. So I also have some numbers about PCI specifically. I didn't want to do, I focused on PCI because I thought that might have the most broad reach in this crowd, but obviously this stuff applies to HIPAA and SOX and FSMA and other regulations out there as well. But let's see here. What I found was interesting here is if for companies that are fully compliant, they pass a PCI or a HIPAA audit, 29% of them a year later are not compliant. So you're going to hear me talk a little bit about continuous compliance, which basically is the idea that compliance isn't just a one-week activity where you run some reports and satisfy an auditor. Compliance is basically something you have to do year-round, just like you do with security. And I thought that in the bottom there where it's orange, I thought it was interesting that 0% of companies found to be compliant, or 0% of companies were compliant at the time a data breach occurred. So when you read about the Home Depots and the Targets, they were technically not compliant. They didn't meet all the requirements of the regulation. And maybe because of that, they failed, they had the security breach as well. Any questions so far? I'm not going to read all these questions. There's obviously a lot here. The point I'm trying to make here is these are the kinds of questions an auditor might ask when doing a compliance audit. But essentially, it just comes down to, do you know who has access to what on your network? Do you know what files and folders are sensitive? Do you know, can you answer questions about who has access to which files and folders? Do you know who belongs in which groups? An auditor might even ask you something like, do you know who was added as a domain admin on April 28th at 8 a.m.? So they can get very granular to make you prove that you have information. And if it's going to take you, if you can't answer those questions or it's going to take you weeks, good luck passing your audit. So these are the questions that Dell can help you answer. All right, so now I'll switch a little bit into marketing mode and just tell you about some of our solutions.
These are good times for your company. Revenues are up, costs are down, and customers are happy. In fact, the future of your business has never looked brighter. But that same success can actually put your company at greater risk of failing to comply with internal policies and governmental regulations. And it's up to you to have the right policies in place to keep your company's growing body of sensitive information safe around the clock. But maintaining continuous compliance isn't easy in today's world, where it seems like security breaches are in the news almost every day. In fact, a recent survey showed that 79% of respondents had experienced a significant security incident in the past year. The result was an average cost of over $1 million due to data loss, and even greater damage to the company's reputations. And data shows that the overall number of records compromised last year numbered in the tens of millions. But you can safeguard your company and enjoy around-the-clock peace of mind by building a continuous compliance policy based on Windows management and governance risk and compliance solutions from Dell Software. Dell Software Solutions help you continually assess, audit, remediate, and manage your environment so you can meet internal policies and external regulations. Continuous compliance starts with assessment in the form of analyzing access rights and permissions, fine-tuning configurations, setting baselines, and automated reporting, so you have complete visibility and always stay one step ahead of threats. The next step is auditing key performance and security indications, tracking and reporting on user activity, and enabling real-time alerts, so you ensure the right level of access and are notified of any out-of-bounds activity. The third step is to prevent breaches and enable fast remediation if a breach does occur by implementing preventative controls, quickly identifying and correcting the cause of a breach, and getting lost data back online fast. And the final step is the ongoing management of your environment, with the monitoring and administration of access rights, comprehensive reporting, and the ability to retain and retrieve key compliance data. So with Windows management and governance risk and compliance solutions from Dell, you can spend less time worrying about compliance and more time enjoying your company's growth. To learn how, visit dellsoftware.com/cc.
Okay. So, what drives our customers' GRC needs? External regulations, adherence to internal policies and standards, security breaches, leaks of sensitive data, and a failed IT audit. So a lot of times we don't really find customers having the budget or interest to have these conversations until they've already felt some pain. So that's kind of a shame, because sometimes the damage is already done when people are coming to us or other vendors out there to try to help them with their GRC initiatives. So these are the challenges that we find companies have with their GRC. They don't have visibility into their current environment. They lack good reporting tools, good alerting tools. They are over-reliant on manual processes. And as the environment grows, those processes, you just can't keep up. They don't have a GRC strategy. They have inadequate data protection, and they fail to plan for external and internal audits. So these are areas, again, where we can help. One thing, too, that I think is kind of obvious, but a lot of organizations, compliance and security are almost treated separately. The compliance team is focused on passing the audit, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily work hand in hand with the security team on what the best overall approach is for the organization. So we believe in a security approach to compliance, basically focus on best practices in security, and compliance, for the most part, is going to take care of itself. So compliance would be a bare minimum of what you would need. So at Dell, you saw in the video, we basically have sort of 4 pillars for our continuous compliance. We have assess, which basically means, do you know who has access to what? Can you run reports to see how permissions and groups and access to folders and shares and stuff like that? Do you have visibility and are you able to generate the reports to prove that? Configuration settings. Do you know how your servers and your point of sale systems and workstations are configured? Are they patched up? What operating system? What software is installed? And then you can set baselines, so you can see if when you deploy a new server, is it matching the same configuration as your other servers, so you can do comparison reporting. Audit and alert. Basically, we can not only just across Windows servers, but across NetApp and EMC and file servers and VMware, et cetera. We have the ability to monitor who's doing what in Active Directory and who's doing what within these file servers. So any type of sensitive folder or sensitive data, we can monitor that. We can even monitor in the cloud. So we have solutions for monitoring sensitive OneDrive or Box or Dropbox accounts. And then there's real-time alerts anytime suspicious activity happens. We can implement preventative controls. In some cases, we can control who can do what in Active Directory. We can control who can do what in Exchange, who can do what from an administrative standpoint in SQL Server. And then we can remediate things. So if something happens to Active Directory or something happens to Exchange, we have some very powerful recovery tools to restore that data without having to take those systems offline. And basically with managing, we can basically help you administer access rights on a day-to-day basis. We've got tools to help you with day-to-day Active Directory administration, day-to-day with permissions management across all the other Windows platforms, and reporting and things like that. A lot of automation. So essentially, we talked about this. How do we help you pass audits? We can help you prevent changes to Active Directory Exchange and sensitive files and folders. Detection will alert on suspicious activities. Reporting, we can schedule and deliver auditor-ready reports to all of your key stakeholders. And our report library is built in to be audit-ready. So we have reports designed just for PCI compliance, for example. And remediation, we can quickly restore security settings, recover objects in AD. We can even recover an entire AD forest and automate that. And along the same idea, this is how we can help you prevent and detect data breaches. Because if we can do the prevention and detection and remediation for compliance, we can do the same thing to secure your data and your systems. I did add forensics here, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. We got a new solution out there that allows you to quickly get all that, to analyze and do forensics analysis of a security breach. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And I guess the one point I want to make here is Dell does have very extensive end-to-end solutions for security. By no means am I an expert on all of them, but within our booth, we've got a lot of expertise there that knows how to piece this together so that you are truly getting a good identity solution integrated with a GRC solution with maybe endpoint and SonicWall. We even have SecureWorks, which is a managed service provider so that monitors security on your network. Business value, we minimize effort. We give you the ability to prove and provide evidence of IT controls. We reduce stress and complexity. A lot of our reporting tools and alerting tools come from native event logs, or we generate our own logs, but we do a lot to make them user-friendly, very easy to read, decipher, interpret, as opposed to cryptic things that you might see in a Microsoft log. We certainly provide reports for all your stakeholders, security, compliance, auditors, and then we control costs because we can automate a lot of your operational activities. Okay, let's take a look at some of our solutions. Do we have any questions so far? Okay. So I wanted to briefly mention Active Role Server. This is a automated provisioning solution. It is meant to be essentially a replacement for what you would be doing in Active Directory. This has been one of our best sellers at Dell and Quest for many years. And it's very good at being able to delegate administrative rights and who can do what, and providing a variety of reports. I don't want to go into too much detail on this, but if this kind of solution for identity and provisioning interests you, I would recommend talking to somebody in the booth. UCCS is brand new. This stands for Unified Communications Command Suite. It it's really made up of two products. One is diagnostics. So if you were putting in IT telephony or you're using Link for teleconferencing and you're essentially going to replace your old PBX or Cisco systems perhaps with like a Microsoft-based phone environment, we have the diagnostic tool that monitor bandwidth and quality of service and essentially will tell you if things aren't, you can also see usage, who's using it, that sort of thing. And then the other piece of it is analytics. And the analytics one is what fits into our GRC space. It'll do data leak protection. And in a nutshell, what that means is you can set up rules to notify you or report on when somebody is emailing someone they shouldn't, perhaps it's a competitor, or when somebody is sending out certain types of data, or you're scanning the copy or subject line of the email for sensitive words, like if you said, credit card in the email body, you could find all the emails where somebody mentioned credit card in the body. So we consider this a very powerful data leak protection tool, and there's a really nice interface on it, and there's a good demo of it in our booth. Recovery Manager. Recovery Manager is sort of a generic way of saying we have Recovery Manager for Active Directory, we have Recovery Manager for Exchange, we have Recovery Manager for SharePoint. Did I leave anything out? And what? Forest. Yeah, and we have Recovery Manager for Active Directory Forest Edition. So the Recovery Manager for Active Directory is going to allow you to essentially restore objects at a very granular level. You could actually just restore attributes, but the Recovery Manager for Forest Edition is like no other product on the market. We have not found a competitor. If your entire forest goes down, we can automate and expedite how quickly you'll get that forest restored. And with that, I want to kind of move it in a little bit to the forensics part of our solution set. So those were some of our key core products in our GRC space, but let's talk a little bit about IT search. So any questions so far? Nope. All right, so Enterprise Reporter is our flagship reporting tool. It will tell you just about everything you want to know about permissions, users, groups, membership across Active Directory, Exchange, SQL Server, and then we even have an option to do file storage analysis. So, and there's a point to telling you about this in a minute when it comes to forensics. So Enterprise Reporter gives you configuration and visibility, security assessments, and we even do pre-migration and storage analysis. We can help you plan capacity on your file servers. We can see which departments and users are your biggest offenders of storage, how fast are your servers filling up. But from a security and compliance standpoint, the configuration and the security aspects of Enterprise Reporter, again, there's at least 160 built-in reports that you can schedule and distribute in a variety of formats to know anything and everything about how security is configured and how systems are configured. Change Auditor. This is our one of our best-selling products within Dell software. It is auditing on steroids. It basically will tell you what, when, where, why, and from which workstation activities are taking place. So it's kind of like a video camera. It's watching over time what kinds of activities are happening. And we basically not only have it for Active Directory, but we have it for Active Directory queries, so we can tell what third-party applications are talking to Active Directory. We have it for Exchange, who's doing what to sensitive mailboxes, SharePoint, Link, VMware, NetApp, and Windows File Servers, EMC, and SQL Server. And like I told you, we can also audit and monitor suspicious changes and activities to cloud storage as well, like OneDrive, Box, and Dropbox. But essentially answers the 6 W's, and this replaces your Windows event logs. So when you enable your event log auditing using Microsoft's logging, you probably will see a performance hit. You probably get a lot of garbage data in there that you don't need. Change Auditor can more efficiently make sure it's grabbing the right data. It'll normalize it so that it's easy to read, and it'll stored in a much more efficient manner, and you won't get the performance hit on your servers by having native logging enabled. So basically, this is an example of what it looks like, but you'll get kind of red, yellow, green lights that say what's happening, and you can click on that, and if something changed, the configuration in Active Directory, well, first of all, you could prevent that change from happening first, but let's just say somebody changed something that they shouldn't have, you can roll it back because it has before and after values. So. And then InTrust, this is the last of the 3 products that fit into our IT search suite. InTrust is essentially event log management. It's kind of a security information event management light solution, but it specializes in managing logs from Unix, Linux, and all the Microsoft platforms. But basically anything that'll generate a syslog file, InTrust will take that in, and it has like a 40-to-1 compression, which is unbelievable. The database just screams high performance. So if you are tasked with keeping your logs for years from a variety of sources, this InTrust is a good log management tool, and it can also write that files out to a SIEM solution. So it's not a replacement for SIEM. Well, in some ways it could act like a SIEM solution, but if you have a SIEM solution, it can complement it nicely in many ways. So let's talk a little bit about IT search. There's a really good demo on our website. I just don't have the time to share it today. It takes about 20 minutes, but it basically just shows how we have a Google-like interface for security. So you basically call up our web browser, and you can, and I'll show you some screenshots here in a minute, but we're basically bringing in data from a variety of sources, whether they be through Change Auditor, Enterprise Reporter, or InTrust, or those third-party syslog data that we can import into InTrust. But IT search is a part of InTrust, and it basically it's the glue that ties our core security and auditing products together. And with it, you can essentially do Google searches for anything activity related, for users or objects, anything you want to know about your Active Directory environment, essentially, and who's doing what. But there's a really good demo we have on our website that shows you how we would, a real use case scenario of how you would detect somebody, let's say, trying to send credit card data through FTP. You'd be able to get to who gave them access, who touched that file, when they touched it, what did they do with it. So essentially with IT search, we can correlate disparate IT data. Again, it's kind of like Google for security. You can review incidents quickly. You can find it much better. You can bring all this log information together in one source and comb through it with an easy-to-use interface. So you can essentially investigate things and find things maybe in 5 minutes that might take you 5 days otherwise. Real-time log collection, it normalizes the data, so it presents a standard view of it. We talked about that. And it's a single pane of glass. Like I said, with InTrust, you can also integrate with SIEM solutions. And it'll support a wide variety of systems. It'll take log data, syslog data from firewalls and other devices as well. So here's what a sense of what you can see here. So in this case, basically, we can look at we did a search and we can see who, where, what. But in this case, we were looking for computers on the network, and it gave us a whole bunch of information. So again, it's a nice, clean browser interface. You can search all of your IT assets in one place. In this screen here, we're looking at users. We can see what department they're in. And then there's a whole bunch of metadata on the right-hand side that tells you about those users. Let's see, we can correlate events with those users, so we can see what's happened with them in terms of like what groups and user memberships have they been added to. So you can kind of do reverse searches, or you can search forward, and essentially whatever activities that's happened with that user in terms of groups and permissions, or changes in Active Directory. Or even what kinds of files and folders they're accessing on the network. You can tie all of that back to that user. So this kind of speaks to that. You can see what resources the user had accessed. So if again you're trying to figure out once you find out that maybe this person did something suspicious, within a single pane of glass you'll be able to see all of their suspicious activity and all their non-suspicious activity. You can see where they have access to, what folders and shares. So you can see how the access was obtained, which administrator gave them permissions, added them to which group or gave them certain permissions. So essentially, I know that's not a super exciting demo of IT search, but we do have it running real time in the Dell software portion of the Dell booth. So this is a product that generated the second highest number of Randy Franklin Smith webcast attendees recently because it is really a very powerful solution, and we think it's one of the things that separates us in the IT GRC space. So real quick, we'll wrap up here with a quick ad for Dell. Obviously, Dell does end-to-end solutions. We work hard to optimize our hardware and our storage with our software, but we obviously offer services and software as well. From a Dell software standpoint, we're really focused on 3 areas. We're focused on your data center. We're focused on helping you manage the cloud. Information management is all about big data and analytics. That's a big play for us. We also have a lot of database management and development tools. And then mobile workforce, we realize this is a BYOD world, so we have a lot of endpoint and device management solutions as well. All of these are in our booth, but underpinning it all is really kind of what we talked about today, is making sure that all of the technology is secure and that the data is protected. Within Dell software, I'm from our Windows Server Management group. This is really the old Quest software group. We've been doing migrations and Windows expertise for like 13 years. We've got a strong story in IT governance, risk, and compliance. And then we also have a lot of management tools in form of administration, reporting, and recovery. But we support all of the Microsoft platforms and some non. I won't read them to you, but you'll see Change Auditor on here, Recovery Managers on there, the United Communications Command Suite's on there. So we continue to win industry awards. This just speaks to our excellence. And then I think this is kind of our brag slide. We have been doing this for 13 years, so we've got 75 million user accounts audited across 11 platforms. We've migrated 65 million Active Directory accounts. So we've done a lot with Exchange, we've done a lot with SharePoint, and we're the only 2-time Microsoft ISV Partner of the Year. So we are the Microsoft Windows Server experts, and we've been doing this longer than anybody in town. With that, I got next steps for you. We are giving away a Dell Latitude 13 7000 2-in-1 Ultrabook tablet in the Dell booth. You need to see a demo, and then you get entered in a raffle. So we'll be doing that daily. Like you saw in the video, visit dellsoftware.com/CC. The CC is short for continuous compliance. Remember the really good demo of IT search I talked about? If you go to that, it'll be the most, there's a banner promoting that webcast. That was a Randy Franklin Smith webcast. Or you can email me directly if you want some more information. So with that, I think the next slide maybe is for surveys, but I think that concludes our session today, unless you guys have some questions. We'll get you out of here early. Yeah. I'm sorry? What is Dell One Identity Manager? Well, we sell a lot of our management and security solutions in tandem with Dell One Identity. In fact, in the office I work in, there's a lot of Dell One Identity staff worked in there. but they're going to be, very different. The Dell One Identity is going to be much more provisioning tool, whereas we're more reporting and, do you want to take that?